in-depth race recaps.
He's shown speed, he's shown dominance at other racetracks.
Pit stops and strategy.
Hell yeah, boys. Let's go. Race strategy, man.
Fantasy racing insights.
Talking about being a team in the summer. We did it. Good job, boys.
Your weekly home for everything Ryan, Blaney, and Team 12.
Good job, Timmy. Here's to many more, fellas. Thank you.
This is the Team Blaney podcast.
Let's go race for a championship.
There it is. Live in two places, at least. Facebook
Welcome,
and
everyone.
social chat.
We are here on a Wednesday doing another little live chat broadcast here on Team Blaney on Facebook and on YouTube. At least I believe we are having a little bit of technical difficulties with TikTok, it seems, today. Hopefully we're not getting shadow banned or something odd, but we'll do the best we can right now. How's it going, Steve? How's it been in the 2 days since we had the podcast show?
Well, I don't know. They released the paint scheme, and a lot of love, a little bit of hate for it, but I think it's pretty cool looking. People are going, the colors are a little bit, the extra colors are good, but then on the other hand, they're maybe not in the right places. I don't know. It seems like
it's one of those. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's just because it's different. People are really used to so Ryan has a Dent Wizard scheme for this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway, and people are used to just the white and blue, like your shirt you got on there, Dent Wizard scheme, basic, exactly. So the scheme for this weekend, they've incorporated like a yellow and like an orangish yellow that comes from the I don't know if it's older or just an alternative Dent Wizard logo that has the actual wizard on it, and that's in the wizard's wand is where there you go, where the like sparkly colors come from. So I mean, I think I mentioned in our Discord chat that I would really love the paint scheme if this was the first time, brand new sponsor, never seen the car before, and I think it's fine, honestly, but for me it's like I wish they would put the logo on the hood or put the wizard somewhere on the car, even on the side of the car or on the hood or something, and to make people kind of understand where all the colors come from. But it's not a bad looking car at all, but it was interesting to see fans of Ryan that have seen him in, he's wanted a Dent Wizard car before at, I think, Talladega, and it's just change, and people don't always like change. So it's still going to be a great looking car. I'm looking forward to seeing it this weekend specifically as I head down to Miami. So
That's right. You guys are live and in person this week, right? So you guys going to see just Saturday and Sunday? When are you heading down?
we're heading down very early Saturday morning, and then we'll be there for potentially a little bit of qualifying, the Xfinity Series race, and then back there again on Sunday for the Cup, the Cup race. So should be a good time. First time in a while where the last 2 years that we went to Homestead, it also coincided with us doing the NASCAR fan rewards program, getting the VIP experience that if you get enough points you can get one of those. And we did a pace car ride a couple years ago, and we did a photo in Victory Lane this past fall, which if you remember what happened this past fall at Homestead, Ryan's, dominating a good chunk of that race and loses it out of the last turn, and absolutely devastated. We were standing in the pit box getting ready to hopefully celebrate with the team and everything. Excited that our NASCAR rewards experience is going to go. We're going to get to take a picture with Ryan in Victory Lane. And that whole last restart or sequence was crazy because Ryan did lose the lead and then kind of got it back again and got back out front for a little bit, and then still gets passed by Reddick on the last lap. Absolutely devastated and still had to go. Wasn't going to give up the experience. Still went to Victory Lane. Congratulated Tyler Reddick. Got the picture. But man, it was this close to being one of those unbelievable fan story moments. Moment of a lifetime. Our friend Justin Hughes and his wife Chelsea got to experience that exact thing happen in 2023 in the midst of Ryan's championship run, where he wins at Martinsville, and they had that same fan rewards experience and got to check that out. So they got to get that moment, and we were robbed of it. But I told some folks that if Ryan went to Martinsville the next week last year and won the race again. So if even though I wasn't there, like if he hadn't done that, I probably would just been just absolutely devastated all off season by things ending on that tone. So
I just want to let you know I've logged into the TikTok, and I have the TikTok live now, even though we're not doing it through our normal means here, but I actually have it up through the phone. So we are live on TikTok too, just for the fun of it. We'll figure that out and get it back to where we can do all of them all together there. But I was wondering, like, is it the new drinking game this week going to be every time they mention on TV that Reddick passed? I think that should be the drinking game. That, and every time that Warrior says hot rod,
yeah, that's
hot rod.
That's a good possibility. I've seen I've already started to see the videos pop up on social media of that last lap, and NASCAR Chasm threw one up earlier. He was having some fun, and I just put like a crying face emoji, and he said everything was fine. It turned out fine. I don't know about that, but
it's okay.
You see in our chat here, long time Blaney fan Bob Akey here, going all the way back to the quickest lap days. Thanks for tuning in, Bob. He asked, what do we think of fans not accepting Ryan or Tim making a mistake last week? These guys aren't infallible, which is kind of what we talked a little bit about on the podcast, right? Where we said, at least, we had that discussion, and I said, it's okay to be a fan and accept that somebody has made a mistake, right?
Yeah. That's, what's bad is when people aren't listening. That's the part that probably gets lost there, is like when he comes out and says after the race, and then testing yesterday, same thing. He was asked a question about it, and he answered it flat out, even more definitively, that he made the mistake. Now, is he saying that in order to take the heat off anybody else? Maybe. But I think he genuinely was taking full blame for what happened, and after seeing it especially. So, by Tuesday, they've had their competition meetings, and I'm sure they talked about it, and they showed the video. And, what I tried to get through to people is, initially on the interviews after the race, he was saying he'd have to look at it, and maybe he heard it wrong, or maybe it was conveyed wrong. So he said both things in the first interview during the race when he come out of the infield care. But I, once again, I went back and replayed it, and then videoed it to put that TikTok out, and it was definitely called correctly. 2 out, 1 in. So the spotter was right. Did he misinterpret what he was told? Maybe. Did he flinch a little with what Bell looked like he might be trying to do? Maybe. You said it best Monday night during the podcast that it's a driving incident too.
Yeah.
This is something that just, for the most part, it's not your classic wreck. That's just a racing deal, but it was close to it, and it was just hard to get all 4 of those factors together, plus whatever was happening behind you. Because somebody even mentioned that maybe we should have taken the video of the 45 car, and I needed to go back and look at that, and I haven't yet. But the 45 car, he had a good view of everything coming up through it. He went past everybody as it all happened. So, Bob's right. I mean, that's racing, and that's really he's totally right about that when he says that it's a racing deal. You can't throw a lot of blame at everybody. And we made, like I said, we've made fun of certain guys, like a couple weeks ago with the 77 car, but the truth is overall that, as a matter of fact, he's raced pretty cleanly around Ryan since then. So, maybe some lessons are already learned, maybe some conversations have already been had. We don't know. We don't know how people reach out to each other, when they talk to each other. Sometimes they'll tell the media, but for the most part, they like to keep that all private. because they want to be able to trust each other on the track. They still have to work with each other, around each other, and be safe for each other on the track. And that's sometimes when they get frustrated too, is when they're not safe around each other, and somebody makes some sort of move that's not good. But like I said, for the most part, I wasn't mad about it, especially after watching it myself and seeing what I could see from it. So, I mean, hopefully some of the people calm down. A lot of times the comments are right in the moment, right after it happens. And I think that's a lot of it too. Like, people get just wrapped up in the emotion of, especially the way the day went. It went so badly and then went so well. And then you were thinking, well, they're going to salvage something really good out of this. And they've done that before. And then you have just one more thing happen. So it can't happen like that every week. That's the best part. You go to Miami, and do something different.
So there's been a lot of talk on multiple podcasts this week about practice. And I think it's people are still reacting to the Catherine Legg thing. And a lot of this is a drumbeat from Dale Jr., who is frustrated that practice doesn't exist. And I was listening to his the first weekly show that they do of the week, that's just kind of like the race recap and their thoughts and everything. And he was kind of going through like what he thought was his like ideal situation for practice going forward. And he and TJ Majors kind of put up the fact that maybe they should this is a totally different topic, by the way. Maybe they should come into the weekend, do their 20-minute practice like they used to do, go into qualifying, and then come back again. I guess this is I don't know if he was thinking of this being on a Friday and then coming back Saturday. This might just all be happening on a Saturday. And then come back and bring back happy hour and do one last hour of practice after qualifying is over, and then call it a day. Because he still thinks that teams can benefit from extra practice. Any of these new drivers that are coming in could benefit from that one more hour of practice to kind of dial themselves in for a race. So maybe somebody doesn't get embarrassed like kind of Catherine did. And she's done some interviews now, and she's done a few things where she's kind of saying like, I know the chatter out there, and I know that she didn't say haters, but essentially the haters that are out there. But I feel like, this is something I want to try again. I really like the paddock, yada, yada, yada. So I know you haven't necessarily been a big fan of practice, but like something in me, like just as like this longtime fan and like nostalgic, like I like the idea of happy hour, of that like 1 hour kind of basically practice show coming back on the weekend. And I think it's just the like nostalgia in me wanting it to come back. But I know you're not a huge fan of extra practice.
Well, first off, I mean, to go back to the whole Catherine thing, I'm sorry, but she was not given good equipment. Okay?
Oh, for sure.
She's in a no-win situation, right? She cannot say anything bad about that situation because she wants another chance somewhere along the line, even if it's with them. But I watched practice, and she asked for information from her crew chief on what to do, and they didn't give her an answer. And that ticked me off right off the bat. It was kind of like, just take care of our car and don't hurt anything, what the attitude was. And our goals aren't this and our goals aren't that. She's a race car driver. She's driven 240 miles an hour down the straightaway in Indianapolis. I think she knows how to handle race cars, And the learning curve is the same learning curve that Danica had a problem with, as far as the coming from IndyCar. And I'm not even talking about female and male. I'm talking about coming from IndyCar. And that learning curve is driving without the back end underneath you. How good do you know how to do that? And how well do you operate under learning how to do that? Danica never was very good at it, and she just couldn't pick it up, And that's why they gave her all the extra rides in the Xfinity Series, and while she was still full-time in Cup, to try to help learn how to drive a car that doesn't have the back end underneath you. Who's the best guys right now in Cup? Guys that drive dirt cars, right? They're all guys who know what to do when the car starts to go a little bit to the right underneath them, and how to turn the wheel and straighten it up. And you always see the thing about the hands. So I think maybe a little more practice might have helped her, but I also think the equipment that she had hurt her. And I also think that she wasn't given all the information she needed to improve quickly. So that, that was a no-win situation for her. If she was in a Hendrick car, I bet you they give her more information and let her, let her have a better learning curve. And I bet that car operates a lot better too. So, and who knows what kind of spotter she had, in that situation. She was coming in, she didn't bring her own spotter, So, I mean, that's the whole thing with that. I think she was just put in a bad situation because that's still a track that's not a mile and a half. So it's still a track that has off throttle time and, and braking and so forth. So, yeah, I'm not gonna say anything bad about that.
What about happy hour? Would you care to see something like that come back again post qualifying?
I think that's part of the reason why they've gotten rid of it is the fact that they don't want these guys to dial everything in right away. Because the first stage of the race, that's what they do. A lot of these guys will dial everything in the first stage of the race, and by the second stage of the race, they're really tight racing together by then. I think they want a little bit of uncertainty. I think they want everybody to be on edge a little bit early in races. So I don't know if NASCAR really wants that. And, financially, what's a set of tires cost? Because now you're talking about another set of tires too. Tens of thousands of dollars, per team and so forth. So I think that was part of the reason originally that they got rid of it and tried to get it down to where like they don't even have it at the super speedways, So yeah, I like it the way it is right now. If they need extra practice based on a new surface or a track they haven't been to or a tire compound that they haven't dealt with before, that's fine. But for the most part, I want them to be able to lock in 20 minutes, 25 minutes that they have. And, I think the racing is better when they're a little more on edge and not locked in as easily. You see the cream rise to the top quicker.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember more so what it was like pre-COVID, essentially, when they had more. Because that is one of the arguments people have said is that the more practice they get, the more opportunities that they get dialed in, but the more cars get dialed in, and the field gets even closer. And then it's even in the next gen era, it's even makes that even harder to pass. But I still feel like there's an opportunity that guys dial themselves out by trying to make too many changes, especially if it is a full hour and not just 20 minutes or so. So, yeah, I don't know.
Bob mentioned Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
And what he would do with practice. I'm going to say something, and it may not be a popular opinion, but poor Kyle Busch, because his equipment isn't there. He does more with less right now than anybody that's out there. No offense to Richard Childress, but Richard Childress Racing is not an elite team anymore. They're starting to fade, and they're starting to lose ground to Trackhouse, and they're starting to lose ground even to Spire as far as the Chevys go. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of shakeups, but they've had a lot of problems over there with staff and management, whether it was, and just different things behind the scenes. And I'm not sure if they are giving Kyle the best equipment to deal with, let alone the best pit crew to deal with right now. And I think, Kyle's just in a bad situation. Maybe it'll right itself. Maybe he will have one of those days where, like I said, he outperforms the car because that's what he definitely has to do right now to get it up in the top 5. So I don't know. There's some people that ask Harvick exactly. So there are people that have stuck with Richard, and that's great. He has been an incredible part of the sport, but right now at this point in time, something's wrong there, and I'm not sure what can correct it.
Yeah, I think RCR they came out hot with the next gen car, and part of that was because they were people at least assume this is why they were heavily involved in the development of the car. Like the original prototypes of it were built at RCR. I think RCR actually has some contracts, which I think some other teams do as well, to build some of the parts that are sold to all the teams. So I think they had a kind of an advantage. So that Reddick won 3 races the one year. Kyle Busch came in the next year. He won 3 races kind of right off the bat. And then you saw it last year where the performance fell off a little bit. I mean, there's 3 or 4 times where Kyle had an opportunity to win a race and just the cards didn't fall his way. And we've even seen that this
Mhm.
year. He's had a few opportunities. I mean, this last race for him was terrible, but that wasn't anything on track that made any of that happen. So yeah, they're falling off a little bit. I do think, I don't know if practice would help him or anybody else that's struggling right now.
Yeah.
They know what's going on in
Yeah.
the Xfinity series though, and that's never fallen off for them. So they do well over there.
I think that what an extra practice would do is, to me, would stink. Is okay. Let's say this is my best example. Let's say the Penske boys go out in the first practices and just kill it. Right? They have something with the setup. They have something they're doing, and it's all they're all three of them quicker. Not the quickest, but up in the top 5, 10 of the quickest guys. Quickest guys on 10-lap average, 15-lap average, 20-lap average. And then they do whatever they do, and then they come back to that second practice. When that between the first practice and the second practice, everybody gets a chance to look at everybody's data. They don't necessarily get a look at internal data, but they can look at the data on what line guys were running, and where they were picking up the throttle and things like that. They can see some of that stuff, and when they can see some of that stuff, they might figure some things out. And I'd rather not give them an extra practice for the other teams to catch up. That's the thing. Is like all of a sudden maybe a couple of the other Ford teams go, oh, well, what were they doing here? And then see if they can duplicate it in the next practice. Let them try to figure it out on the track during the race. At that point, then you're at least racing with those guys and not, doing homework. So that's another thing about an extra practice I don't like.
So outside of Josh Berry and mostly Penske equipment that got a victory, also the first Ford to win this year, and Ford has won a race now much earlier than they did last year. Some of that I would say has to do with the fact that there's no body changes to the car or anything in this season, but the 3 Penske cars have all run up front, all shown a ton of speed, all even Cindric has scored, I think, in the top 5 of the most stage points. But almost none of them have anything to show for it finish-wise. Like Joey Logano hasn't, his finishes have been awful as well. But what do you make of their like success on track, but not being able to kind of close the deal yet this year?
Yeah, it's just it's just 1 or 2 bobbles at this point, and it's just different. Each one of them have had a different thing happen to them. It's like Austin is really, like you said, he's got all kind of stage points already this year. He's actually running up front, leading more laps. It's just I was trying to think of like having a perfect weekend. Like Ryan was saying something about it. He'd like to just have a weekend where nothing happens out of the ordinary that they have to overcome, And I was trying to equate it to other sports when I was thinking about it. And one of the things was like, okay, so baseball, right? What's the best thing you can do in baseball to win a game? And that's have a perfect game, right? We go the whole game and you just don't give up a hit. And, hopefully your team scores a run or 2 in there. And then, and I was trying to think what the NASCAR equivalent of that would be in a weekend, right? Probably winning the pole, leading all the laps, right? And winning the race, right? What they used to call stinking up the show. And it's so weird because you just don't see that at all. And really, truthfully, NASCAR, I don't think really wants that to happen. They don't want somebody just dominating a whole weekend. There'd be like an investigation, right? They have to pull the car apart and see what's going on and who cheated, Why is that guy so much faster than everybody else? But to some extent, just a smaller version of that, where qualify in the top 10, lead a bunch of the laps, maybe win 1 of the 2 stages, and then, win the race. And I think that's well within reach for Ryan, especially. Logano sometimes does strategy things that are pretty funky and then they work out. So that's just the way his team operates and the way sometimes that his car's set up to do those things. But for Ryan, the really good weekends for him are the weekends where they just show up, they have speed, they just blow everybody away. I mean, the 2 Martinsvilles in the last 2 years are good examples of just we're the fastest guy, and once we get around you, it's over. And and then we even are so fast we get around you. So just just want to have one of those weekends right now. Overall, I just would like to see them show up this weekend, have a good practice. Nothing, nothing bad happened to the practice. Qualifying, that's the other thing. Penske cars have actually been qualifying up in the top 10. Ryan has a pole, and then the guys last weekend, look, I think all three, well, including the 21 car, I think those three were all up in the top 10. So just having a weekend where they do that, start up in the top part of the race, so that you don't have to worry about operating in dirty air and going and trying to pass a lot of guys. All you got to do is pass 2 or 3 guys. And then once he's out front, we know that when he gets out front, unless the car is messed up, that, he's going to lead a bunch of laps, and it's going to take a really weird tire fall off for him to lose the lead because he's so good at maintaining the laps as they go along. So I just want to see him do that personally. And then the other teammates, Cindric, I think it would be the other one. He has led a bunch of laps already this year, and I think he's deserving of a good finish or two too. So
Yeah, I think and some of the folks in the chat have mentioned that Homestead is a perfect weekend, and why not this weekend to make that happen? 2 straight second place finishes at Homestead, nearly had an opportunity to win both of those races. That didn't get the job done, but both of those years went on to win at Martinsville. The difference being that this race, is back in the spring again for the second time in the last 4 years, I believe. So the weather might be slightly different. It looks like it's going to be like or it's going to be in the 80s this weekend. A little bit different from maybe the temperature that it was there in November. So people kind of say tracks different times of the year, race a little bit different. So I think, and to see if there's been any development over the off season as well when it comes to setup for Homestead. But yeah, I'm hoping they come with the same type of speed. And going back to Josh Berry, he has kind of proven that if you run up front, if you run in the top 5, at some point the win is going to come. And he's run up front, run in the top 5, contended for race wins this year. Also ran into bad luck in situations leading up to this race, and then finally goes out there and wins, and has some strategy things and stuff fall his way at Las Vegas and picks up the win. So I think you kind of just said that it's there. They have the speed.
mm-hmm.
They just kind of, I don't even know, like you said, I don't even know that they need a perfect weekend, but they just need to have things kind of come together. And, Ryan's in the past pre-championship season, their biggest thing was they used to come out kind of on fire. So even in qualifying before, like in 2022, they qualify super well, run really well in the first stage, and then kind of lose the handle on things by the end of a race. And he kind of got known as somebody that really couldn't close a race out. And that totally flipped in 2023. They would come off the truck okay, they were qualifying okay, and they would pick up speed throughout the race and then learned how to close out races. So I think it's just, I don't know if it's a philosophy change or a setup change or whatever but it's proven to be relatively successful, winning 6 races in the championship in the last 2 years. So
yeah, it's also the improvement of what they're doing with the newer generation car too. I think there's everybody's still learning, and everybody's still tweaking what they can get away with tweaking inside the box, and even maybe what's a little bit outside the box. Because that's what I'm thinking is happening at Penske is the qualifying speed to be so much better this year all of a sudden is something that they either worked on, and once again, working on, usually they would sacrifice some handling to do that. Well, now it doesn't even look like they're sacrificing the handling because, look how well Ryan was able to fire through the field, in the dirty air last weekend. So I think Penske itself is just doing a good job of keeping up with anybody else, keeping up with the Joneses, and having that speed that they need. You said you were going down there Well, I forgot now. You said Saturday or Sunday you're heading down?
Saturday. Saturday is the plan.
And,
I know Ryan has a Q&A at the track at like 10:45 in the morning or something, but I don't think we're going to get there in time. It's like a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
We'd have to wake up super
long
early
drive.
to get there in time for that. So I don't foresee that happening, but
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of early for that drive. Because I was the wife was saying something about there's some fires down in the Homestead area right now, grass fires or something.
yeah, I did just see Bob Pockris
That-
had retweeted something from the city of Homestead or the Homestead Fire Rescue folks that said gave an update on there's like a brush fire, like I think they're calling it a grass fire down toward like the Keys. So there is some smoke, some smoke in the area and some things. They're saying though, like the last line of that press release that they put out said the Homestead race is still going, on as scheduled or, as planned. So yeah, that's definitely something interesting to get thrown into this weekend that I'm hoping, things turn out okay for that for, not just the race weekend, but for, anybody else that's down in that area and kind of experiencing that or, experiencing fans, thousands of fans packing into the grandstand with, like smoke in the air is not good. I mean, I can tell you living here in Central Florida, just, right at the base of the Ocala National Forest, there's, wildfires there from time to time, lots of prescribed burns, but, we'll get clouds of smoke that basically, cover the area and it's not easy to breathe. So you don't want to have to experience that while you're outside watching a race.
Yeah, hopefully, I've got to check my weather app because you're going down there and last I saw it was only gonna be 5% chance of rain, but you are going down there and once you announce that you're coming, sometimes that goes up a little bit.
I mean, you made that joke last week, right? That you asked if I was in Las Vegas or not because it was raining in the desert
on Friday night or whatever. Yeah, it's that part of Florida though doesn't really get the pop-up storms quite the same way where you're at, right? I mean, through the Tampa, Ocala, going toward Daytona, they get a ton more of these pop-up thunderstorms that just pop up and then they blow through and then. But down near the Miami area, it's kind of a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely still storm activity and stuff, especially during like tropical weather season. But I haven't, knock on wood, been to a race yet at Homestead where it's rained, and I think we're probably going on our. I mean, the first time I ever went to Homestead was when now I don't know if famous or infamous race where Carl Edwards had a great chance to win a championship and he crashes with Joey Logano in turn one, massive crash, and Jimmy Johnson kind of surprisingly wins his 7th championship. So that was my very first Homestead race. Took a few years off, and then we've been going pretty much every year for at least the last 4 or 5 years. I think maybe we missed one of them during the pandemic time yeah, it's one of my favorite tracks to go to. It's not too far. It's about like a 5-hour drive, which is about the same as Atlanta is for us. So I'm interested to see what the crowd is. I know on the teardown, Jordan Bianchi said that the track was optimistic about the crowd, but I also feel like track presidents are usually or say they're optimistic about ticket sales and things. I did see they had a sale going on that was like it was like because of the area code being 305 in Miami or something down there, they were selling cup tickets for $30.50 or $30.05 or something like that at one point. So they're trying to do some sales. I mean, I can't say I added to the economy because I used up I keep talking about fan rewards. I used up fan rewards points to get our Xfinity and cup tickets at the end of last year. So but we go down there, stay at the hotels, eat the food.
Yeah, I would say a good way to judge how ticket sales are is go to like SeatGeek or one of those and look for it like just 2 or 3 days out and see if the prices drop. If they drop below what the actual ticket price is, even if you see that, then you know that they didn't sell enough, and and the interest isn't there because then people are bailing on this on the gamble basically, where they bought a bunch to sell a bunch to make some money and so forth. So that's where you can tell a lot of times where where the pricing is.
And I get it. I mean, I love Homestead. The racing there is fantastic. The facility is, I mean, I would say it's good. It's not like super fancy. It has basically kind of the bare minimum of stuff, but it's pretty well kept up. But I can tell you that very first race that, I went to go see when it was the championship race, and I did get tickets on the secondhand market probably a couple weeks out, but I think I'd like to say our tickets front stretch, halfway up the grandstand were like $20 a person. So, I mean, it's like, I can see the issues of why they left there in the first place. I could see a couple championship races there. I got to see that Jimmy won, and I got to see Kyle Busch win his second championship. I think that was the first time Tara actually went down with me to Homestead. So, and then after that it left. So we're hoping it comes back someday. I'm hoping it comes back too, and I hope they announce it like after this race or something, because it'd be great for that facility to get an upgrade. They have taken out some of the grandstand. There was a big grandstand going into turn one. They've since removed that, and I think they've put like a kind of like a patio party deck type of thing, kind of like Charlotte Motor Speedway has. But it's just a really, I don't know, great place. Great sunsets are there when that race kind of goes from day to night. At least it used to in the fall. I think in the spring it's going to be still fairly nice and sunny by the time the race ends. It's not too difficult to get in and out of. I mean, driving through Miami isn't necessarily the best, but I don't know. I think if people have the opportunity to go to Homestead, they really should. It's great race.
If you run into Skip, if you ever run into Skip there, ask him what he found out from his pit coach about this whole parking yourself in somebody else's pit stall situation. I don't know if people caught that. We only kind of like went about it a little bit on Monday night, but every podcast pretty much since then has addressed it and talked about what would happen, what rule. I mean, the rules were broken because they did get a penalty that, what is it, a pass-through penalty or something?
For pitting outside the box? Is that what we're talking about?
The box, right. So, yeah. And that whole situation with the 20 going to the other pit stall, but it was a teammate's pit stall, and you had questioned it online right away. I think you said with Kelly Crandall, and they're allowed to do it. There's no rule against going to another pit box. Like you said, it's pitting outside the box, but like I said, I said it better only be a teammate. I mean, if you're coming in 12 pit box and you're from, another team, heck with you. We'll just sit here and eat our ice cream and watch.
Yeah. Every podcast, like you said, kind of talked about it. I was listening to Door Bumper Clear today, and they brought it up about it kind of being a gray area. And they said, yeah, if somebody stops in our box, we're going to be, what the heck are you doing here? We're not going to help you. They brought up the single car team thing. Same with, I saw a clip from Harvick's show, and he said the same thing that I said on our show. Like, what about the 47 car? Like, who's going to help them? It could hurt the single car teams. Yeah, it's for safety. The folks on that, the back and forth I had online said that the garage is much closer than you think, and teams would help each other out. And I still question whether if a Chevy pulled in to a Toyota box, whether they'd help you out. Denny, I thought, had the most kind of thought-provoking answer to this, and it took him a minute. I think, he was posed the question about whether it was fair or not to single-car teams, and initially it seemed like he was going to agree with that, but then he's like, well, single-car teams rent their pit crews from other teams. So if they were going to form a plan going forward, it would probably be to stop in the team that owns your pit crew or, supplies your pit crew. Basically, you brought up the fact that could cross manufacturing lines, which it does, but I mean, it already does anyway, since they're supplying those crews. So that was an interesting thought. I mean, it didn't bother me necessarily. And it's something, obviously, hopefully Ryan doesn't have to utilize that, but they can in the future. But I was just immediately thought about the couple single car teams that were out there that, in fairness wise, I understand the safety aspect of it, but there was a benefit. If you weren't allowed to do that, he'd go out on the track, lose a wheel, and he'd have a couple crew members suspended from one of the faster pit crews on the series. So I see the safety aspect. I see the other benefits, but I did kind of immediately question the single car team part of it. So
Yeah, Skip immediately was like, you know, he said he'd have to check with his pit coach at Penske, you know. So right off the bat, he's like, I'd have to see if we were allowed to do anybody else's. He says, definitely our own, sure. If one of our other, if the 2-car came through, or the, you know, even the 21 came through, they would probably do something to help. But he wasn't sure if they would help any other teams, or if it would be along the lines of maybe one of the teams that they supply. You know, that might be another thing. If they supply a pit crew to such and such or whatever, you know, they which train at their place, that they might or might not. So you're right there, and there will be a game plan. I'm sure
they're all talking about it now.
this week. Yeah, about how it's going to work out from here on forward and what we're going to do. And I think manufacturing lines makes a difference too. But like I said, there's pit crews that are trained by one manufacturer and actually get rented out to other ones, you know, with some of the smaller teams. So who really, really, you know, hopefully we never see it again.
Yeah, and
it's one of those.
And I think it was Bob that shared the actual, because somebody brought up the roster rules. Like each team has a roster that says each, you know, that defines what each crew member is allowed to do, who can touch the car, who's going to change tires, ... But it's written into that rule. It says like, except under extenuating circumstances as approved by the sanctioning body, kind of a thing. So, which on almost every NASCAR rule, there's an out at the end of it that basically says like, unless otherwise authorized by NASCAR.
You remember they had to change the rules on who gets suspended and everything, because at one point they had the suspensions for, let's say, loose wheel, and it was, you know,
by the roster.
Front one, it's the front tire changer. And the problem is that at that point the Gibbs boys were doing this whole janky pit stop where the front tire changer wasn't changing only the front tires. He was changing one and then a back one, and the other one was changing a back one, then a front one. And, you know, so they had to change all the rules basically to say that, you know, whoever it was that was responsible for making it a loose tire get suspended, and they're not suspended as long as they were anymore either. So, like I said, they had to change some of those rules for a good reason. But yeah,
I was gonna say in our thanks again to Bob for following along and giving us some topics throughout the thing. But he has a kind of a cool one in here.
That's good.
That it might be a good one for us to talk about. And it involves like Blaney racing memories, and I mentioned when we first saw him comment in here that Bob's a super long time Blaney fan, and he shares a story that, you know, he'd seen Dave race 60 to 70 times and never saw him win until last season. So never saw him win in person until last year when he went back to see the Lou Blaney Memorial after it rained out. Dave wins the race.
Oh man!
You know, Mike drops it and announces his retirement after winning the race. And that goes down as like one of his greatest racing memories. So I can pose the question to you. I don't know if you have a one right off the top of your head, because I think I might need to think a minute. But, you know, anything from even the day. I mean, I think I have stuff from the Dave era and then stuff from the Ryan era. But any stories to share from that? I know you have a great Dave-related story in general. That was kind of more of a life-changing story, but that you could share. But
Yeah. That's for those who are watching that don't know. I guess I should tell that story, right? I mean, TikTok. Like I said, sorry about TikTok, and we're live on it right now through a different means. But the picture you're seeing on the screen from now on, when we get TikTok back up and running, you should see that screen like that in the future. Just to let you know, we'll get that going as soon as we can. And if you want to comment on TikTok, go ahead. But real quick, I mean, that story is the story, right? That's the story of kind of like how we got into all the things that have happened. And, you know, my wife, meeting my wife at the will call window at Pocono Raceway, because we both won tickets through Tommy Bowen Racing. And we both were, here's the funny part is you go to the will call window, and I think there were 8 or 10 winners, you know, everybody got 2 tickets. And I drove myself up there, and I won the tickets like on a Friday and drove up on Sunday. And you're standing there with the other people because they had you meet at a certain time, and the people that were all there were wearing all different drivers, you know, and there were only two of us standing there wearing Dave Tommy Baldwin Racing stuff, which, if you know much, was rare. There wasn't, she had Sandy, the Sandy sponsorship, and then I think she had TBR jacket. There was, so I had the hat. I mean, there wasn't much material out there. You had to know where to find it. It wasn't on a hauler every weekend. You had to order it online. So to not only do that, but then to meet the only other person there who was actually there because they were a fan of Dave's was really, really cool. And that, you're right, it's just, that was life changing. And we have been to Sharon Speedway a bunch of different times and seen him win at Sharon Speedway in the last couple of years. So that's another thing. I mean, we weren't there for the rain out, the completion of that. Unfortunately, I think Jerry Mariotti was, but we were there a couple times the last couple of years where he's won a race, even just on a regular night. Unfortunately, we weren't there for the World of Outlaws win though, a couple years back. That was something else too. So going back to that kind of stuff, and then just everything that's happened since then, with following Ryan coming up and the two of us being together, and then all the stuff that's happened, through this too. So yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, I mean, racing related stuff, I'll share a couple stories because I have a few like highlights. And one of these it's kind of funny because it just came up that Sharon Speedway published a post on their social media channels yesterday, putting a call out for applications for people to go work at the racetrack. And they mentioned, it's like 14 years old and up can come and work there. And it just like, it like just brought back this flood of memories because if folks that are watching haven't listened to our very first podcast episode where we kind of told why we're fans. I had a friend or a family friend from church that worked at the ticket booth at Sharon when I was a kid, who I think talked to my mom and then mentioned that they were looking to hire some people to work at the racetrack. The Blaneys had just bought it. I think they were only a year in to owning the track in the first place. And it was still with the old grandstand. So that goes way back.
Yeah.
So I get that as a summer job. And my first year working there was like actually in the concession stand, changing money. They had this really weird system back then where it was like I don't know why, it was crazy. If you were going to the concession stand, you could only pay in $1 bills or exact change, and it was supposed to speed the process up for ordering and receiving money. So I was the poor soul that had like an apron and a bunch of $1 bills changing money to people in line that were confused as to why this was happening. But that's how I started there, and I went from there to working as a parking attendant / garbage can attendant the rest of the night. Spent a few years doing that, and then through Quickest Lap, meeting Joe Danier. He started working at Sharon on the technological side, and they were getting this new system to do scoring that was computerized, and he plucked me out of the parking lot and brought me up to be essentially, I mean, I think I was in college by that point, but I was still relatively young to be, I think, like the youngest race official on the staff working in the scoring department.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're doing timing and scoring, right?
So
and that was like when they first put the timing and scoring on the cars.
Yeah, and I think
that was like the first time.
I think they had done it for like a year prior to me starting to do it, and then I took it on for there. So all in all, I ended up working at Sharon Speedway for about 10 years before graduating from college and moving to Florida. So like I spent like some of the best years of my life, I think, growing up essentially at Sharon Speedway from a teenager into my 20s and graduating from college. And before I worked at Sharon, wasn't a huge race fan until basically that year. That also kind of coincided with watching Dave run in the Daytona 500, and it was actually the Earnhardt Death 500. But That's when I got interested in it. So it actually kind of piqued my interest when people talked about them owning the track and getting the job. So that's a long story to set up the first story that I have. Is while I was still in that like parking attendant / garbage cleanup role, maintenance, I would, if you will, is a prettier way to say it, at the track. Myself and I believe it was Tony with me that follows us as well. We're on duty that night. It was a NASCAR night, which you're familiar with, where they would do a fundraiser for Victory Junction Gang. So there was Kyle Petty there, there was Ken Schrader there was Tony Stewart there, and Dave was there. And I think it was actually early enough to where they may have run green flag sprints or something at some point in the night, or it might have even been one of the early ones where they just did a autograph session and that was it. They didn't race. But feature time came up, and that was toward the end of our work night until the races were actually over. And I don't know how we got up the courage to go up to the stairs to where the loges were, like the suites. And there's a Sharon Speedway suite all the way at the end. That was like the biggest one there. And like if there was any VIPs there, they would always go and watch the races from there. And somehow got the nerve to ask the matriarch, Kate Blaney, if we could go in and watch the feature races from the Sharon Speedway suite. And with an idea of knowing that there's a chance that some of those guys were in there. So like Tony and I go into the Sharon Speedway suite and sit in some chairs like toward the back of it to where we could still see the race. But like in front of us was Tony Stewart and Ken Schrader and Kyle Petty and Dave, like watching these races. And it was just like, as a young race fan, like the greatest moment of my life, like at that point. So I don't know if that's something she probably would not remember any of that. She also probably would question the fact as to why she even let us do that when we're supposed to be working. So that's like my earliest Blaney related story, but it was just like, I still remember it like vividly, like it being dark and seeing those guys talking to each other. And watching the race, and it's like, watching the race behind like a row of legends. So I had a Schrader story at Sharon Speedway, which was really like, and this was when he was driving a lot of NASCAR, and I remember seeing him standing on the fence in turn 1 watching the racing, and nobody around him. I thought, there's a NASCAR guy over there, and nobody's standing near him, And then another one I remember, and it was like they had a NASCAR night or something or maybe it was just a regular night, that Harvick was there on a weekday with his own car. It was a Shell Pennzoil car, but it wasn't a sprint car. It was probably a modified or like open wheel.
A smaller modified. Yeah. So they were running that class that night, and I saw him come off the track, and I was down the pit area, and I saw him drive over to his trailer, and he got out of the car, and going to these places is a lot different than going to a NASCAR track. If you've got a pit pass, you can get right up there, and there's some like unwritten rules to engagement, but he took a picture or two with whoever was there and did an autograph, and then he went into the trailer, into his hauler. And I thought, oh well, there he goes, because more people would start to gather, right? And no, Kevin went into the hauler to grab a Coke. That's it. He come back out like 30 seconds later with a Coke in his hand. And then everybody else for the next like 5-10 minutes before he had to do anything else, autograph picture, and gave me a great impression of him per se. And that is true. Like you can learn a lot about different guys that way when you go down to places like Sharon Speedway and these guys are running events there. So that was really, really some cool memories of just going to Sharon Speedway and having a pit pass and going down there and, being able to see those guys, talk to those guys. Dale will walk right up to you if you see Ryan's Uncle Dale. He'll walk right up to you sometimes. Say, hey, how you doing? And so it's really kind of cool to go someplace like Sharon Speedway.
Favorite Ryan era memory would be one we've told on the show as well, even I think live after it happened, was Daytona August race. Ryan had come so close in the Daytona 500 already in his young career, still never winning there. But there's this whole situation where, we were already going to the race. You and Kate got involved in a Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. I think it was a trivia night type situation, and you ended up getting tickets to come to Daytona. In that
we won a drawing.
The drawing, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we won a drawing, yeah, and they we got the tickets and we drove like, it was like we only got the tickets like on Wednesday and we made it down there by Saturday night.
Yeah, you had to barnstorm down the way down there. Yep, and you got there like just before. I mean, you didn't get to really see like any of the stuff outside the track and the midway and that kind of stuff. You got there like just before race time. I feel like, at least that's how I remember it.
We didn't,
didn't rain that night.
Pretty much.
You're welcome. But
and it didn't rain, and then
Ryan goes to victory lane in that race, and it's that iconic Josh Williams spotter call of checkered flag at the line. There was a crash on the last lap that I was praying for. It actually came true once he got out to the lead on that last restart, and it was just like I just called it like a magical night because like you and Kate were there and Tara's there, and you guys had been lucky enough to see Ryan win a couple of times by that point. I had never seen Ryan win anything in person, in Xfinity or Nationwide Series races that I saw or anything on the Cup side. I never saw him run a truck race in person, but never saw him win. Finally got to see him win basically at our home track here in Daytona. And it was just awesome. And there's, the pictures from that night, we had that was in our very early infancy of making Team Blaney merchandise with iron-on vinyl and stuff. And we had the Team Blaney OG shirts on. And
I remember Josh messing with us too, because the wife took the picture of us all bent over trying to breathe afterwards. And Josh saw it online, and he's in victory lane or something. He's tweeting back at us. He's like, called us wussies or something.
Yeah, because we were acting like we were worn out. We were spent, and all we did was watch the race. So
all we did was watch the race.
That's definitely one of the favorites. And then the second favorite is that Martinsville win 2023, because second time seeing Ryan in person, once again with you guys, which was awesome. And it was just because I thought it was like that, he'd finally reached the top of the mountain, as to where this is the week before he goes and wins the championship. But I thought, like, all year long, I'm like, if he can just get to the championship 4, that's almost like the goal now for these NASCAR teams. And I was there in person. Mm-hmm. He makes this valiant drive back through the field, battles Eric Almirola, who's on a different strategy for a little bit after, he dominated parts of the race being the fastest car, had run-ins with Denny Hamlin and some other guys during the race, and drives all the way back to the front, wins the race. We're running down we're seated all the way at the top of the grandstand at Martinsville, like running down the stairs as fast as we can to get over to the victory lane area on the front stretch. And just, feeling the emotions of that, and not believing that, you followed this family this whole time. You followed Dave this whole time. You never got to see him win a Cup race. But you see his son come along and have all the success and have an opportunity to go and race for a championship the next weekend. And you felt like you're part of it. You were there to see some of it and how excited they were. And that was awesome. So those are there's more stories to share, but those are my 3.
We were at Talladega a couple weeks earlier too. So we were, at least, and so we saw him win Talladega and win Martinsville like a month later, and then the coolest part about Martinsville, not only after he wins, we get down there, is all the people we ran into that we knew, that we've met over the last couple of years, doing this, doing the podcast, doing the social media end of it. There's so many people that you've kind of met or got to know or gotten to talk to. And they were all down there, they were all like, we were, around friends. That was Hannah, was down there, and actually ran into her last year after the Martinsville when my wife and I were there. So, it's just all those great people who've been following along and who've been there for a long time, getting to experience it all together. It was really cool.
Yeah, that weekend was super cool in general, because there actually was a Ryan Blaney Family Foundation meetup that weekend. So there were a lot of fans there in general. And like you said, lots of folks we got to meet here. So thanks to Bob for bringing up that. So if anyone that had just tuned in, we weren't just here reminiscing about all the cool things that we got to see. There was actually kind of a thing that was brought up about our favorite kind of memories of being of a Blaney fan. So thanks for giving us that opportunity to share that. So Steve, I think it's been an hour. I think that's usually what we kind of set out to do. We're going to try going forward to pop in during the week to do kind of one of these interactive chats every Monday, 8:30 p.m. We try. Something weird happened with TikTok today, but we try to stream our live recording of our weekly race recap podcast, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time here on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. That's if you've been following us for years. It's our normal show that we put out on audio versions on the podcast platforms, but we decided in the last few weeks to start streaming those live as we record them, just for fun, in case anybody wants to see the video side of things. So tune in for that. And then on a lot of race weekends, right before the race, we've been trying to do a little, quick pre-race show that recaps what's happened so far during the weekend, remind people of what Ryan's stats are for that race, and any other news and such that that comes up. So Tom, thanks for tuning in for sure. We've been doing this for about 5 years, the podcast itself. If you go to our YouTube channel and you search for Team Blaney, you can find interviews with every single pit crew member, a couple interviews that we've done with Ryan Blaney himself. We've interviewed crew chief Jonathan Haster. We've interviewed Ryan's old spotter Josh Williams multiple times, his new spotter Tim Fedewa. We've interviewed road crew guys. So we've tried to be our source, kind of like bridging the gap between the race team and the fans, which we are essentially just really big time fans that just want to kind of draw that connection and connect other fans, much like, again, bring Bob back up again, much like Quickest Lap did back in the days for the Dave Blaney fan. So
right.
That's who we are.
This is like the modern. This here is like the modern version of the Quickest Lap, right? I mean, now there's a video element, not just a streaming thing, and and a chat, which is nice. On Monday nights, we might not interact with the chat as much because we're kind of going through what our podcast sounds like. And like I said, the people who are watching on the TikTok right now, like I said, I'll try to make sure that by next Monday night, the stream will be just like what you're seeing on the screen there on TikTok also. And this Monday night coming up, by the way, barring any technical issues, will be a very, very special edition of the Team Blaney podcast, as it's the Team Mez takeover, where you guys will get to see my lovely wife in action, showing off everything that she knows about racing, and actually trying to help me co-host, which is kind of interesting because when we do this, as you can tell, Adam knows really, really did a good job of knowing how to, get conversation going, ask good questions. That's why he takes the lead in a lot of interviews that we do. But when it's my wife and I got to be the leader a little bit because I do it more often. So we'll see how that goes. She's got so much great information and great knowledge, and obviously her fantasy team won last week. So once again, I pointed out on the podcast, not only did her fantasy team win, she had Josh Berry in her lineup.
Yep.
Didn't put him in, didn't replace him. No, had him in her lineup the whole time and just knew he was going to do it. So kudos to her again on that. So if you want to hear great insight on her fantasy picks from this past week, that Monday night, we'll be doing that too.
Sounds good. So thanks, Steve. I'll see you again sometime. Hopefully I make it back from Homestead in our trip to the Caribbean. So
yeah, people take a look. Sundays, we might pop in and do this Sundays too. We've done it once or twice. I might just do it personally this Sunday just to test things again from my end, because usually we run this through Adam's end of things. So keep an eye out Sunday in case we pop up on the re-race. Who knows? Maybe Adam will pop in on the show real quick too if he's in a good cellular situation. You never know. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on all of our social medias when we might pop up with just a little extra show here or there.
All right. See you later, Steve.